4 years ago, I accepted a ride from someone I barely knew. Dylan. I'd seen him maybe 3 or 4 times at group hangouts, just enough to recognize the face and remember the name. When I posted in the group chat about needing a ride to Laura's birthday at her parents' lake house, he was the first to offer. I didn't have many options, so I said yes. He pulled up in a black Accord right on time. The car looked too perfect, like it had just rolled out of a dealership. Vacuum lines on the mats, everything polished to a shine, that sharp chemical smell from detailing products. The passenger seat was already pushed back, like he'd measured the space before I even got in. The first stretch of road was quiet enough. We made small talk about Laura, about work, but something about the way he looked at me made me uneasy. His eyes didn't linger on the road. They lingered on me. Quick glances, then longer ones, like he was deciding something. About 20 minutes in, the conversation shifted. His compliments got more pointed. He said he'd always thought I was different from the others. I had this energy he couldn't ignore. I tried to ignore, keeping it light, but the tone in his voice wasn't playful. It was firm, like he was setting the stage for something. When we hit the back roads, far from cell service, he reached over and put his hand on my thigh. At first, it was just resting there, but then he started pressing harder, moving in slow circles through the denim. My stomach flipped. I shoved his hand away and said, "Don't." I expected embarrassment or an apology. Instead, he smiled. Not sheepish. Smug. Like he'd just proven I was easy to rattle. He kept driving. But the air inside the car was different now. He leaned closer when he talked, voice lower, asking if I'd ever been with someone who knew what they wanted. His fingers drummed against the wheel, but every so often he'd reach toward me again, brushing my arm or shoulder, testing if I'd flinch. The road felt endless, just pine trees on both sides. No gas stations, no houses, not even another car. I knew jumping out at that speed wasn't an option. My pulse was racing so hard I could feel it in my ears. I tried reasoning with him, telling him Laura's house was just up ahead, that people were expecting us. He grinned and said we had plenty of time, that detouring a little wouldn't matter. That's when I realized he wasn't planning on heading straight there. He mentioned a spot by the lake, somewhere private, like it was already decided. My mind scrambled for options. Fighting him outright would have been risky. He was bigger, stronger, and we were trapped in his car. I needed leverage, something he cared about more than me. Then it clicked. The car itself. He'd kept it spotless, like it mattered to him more than anything. I hunched forward, clutched my stomach, and made gagging noises. I forced myself to dry heave against my sleeve, acting like I was seconds from throwing up. His reaction was instant. He cursed, swerved onto the shoulder, and hit the brakes hard. "Not in my car," he snapped, leaning away in disgust. Before the car even fully stopped, I threw open the door and bolted. The forest swallowed me whole as I ran, branches tearing at my clothes, wet earth sliding under my shoes. Behind me, I heard his door slam, gravel crunching under his steps. Then silence. I crouched low behind a cluster of pines, hand over my mouth to stifle every breath. My chest ached from holding it in. The world narrowed to the sound of my heartbeat and the occasional snap of a twig somewhere in the dark. I waited. Minutes dragged like hours. Finally, his engine roared back to life. I listened as the sound grew faint, then vanished completely. I stayed hidden for what must have been another 20 minutes before daring to creep back toward the road. My legs shook so badly I could barely walk. When I finally stumbled out, the road was empty. No headlights, no Dylan, just silence. I started walking, sticking close to the tree line in case he doubled back. After maybe half an hour, A pair of headlights appeared behind me. Panic shot through me. But it wasn't the Accord. It was an old RV. A middle-aged couple pulled over, asking if I needed help. I lied and said my car had broken down, and they drove me the rest of the way to the lake house. When I got there, I plastered on a smile and told Laura and everyone else that Dylan's car had engine trouble. No one asked too many questions, too busy celebrating. But Dylan never showed up. He blocked me on everything that same night. Just like that, he was gone. Later, when I tried to look him up, nothing added up. I still think about the way his car was prepared, about how deliberate everything felt. That seat pushed back, the silence on those roads, the casual way he mentioned going somewhere private. I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't faked getting sick. Now, every time someone offers me a ride, I hear that engine, smell that chemical clean car, feel his hand on my leg, and I say no. My name's Tom, and I've been working warehouse graveyard shifts for 12 years, which is probably why I didn't think twice about stopping for someone else, heading home at 5:15 in the morning. She was standing under the only working streetlight at the bus stop on Merchant Street, holding a dead phone and wearing that uniform from Mel's Diner. February in Michigan, maybe 20 degrees, and she just had the uniform and a thin jacket. Her breath came out in these huge white clouds. I pulled over and rolled down the passenger window. She leaned in, already shivering, explaining her ride had some family emergency and left early. Could I drop her near the suburbs, just past the interchange? Same direction I was heading anyway. The car filled with the smell of coffee and fryer grease when she got in. She immediately adjusted all the heating vents toward herself. Rubbing her hands together, I cranked the heat higher. Been there myself, standing in the cold after a long shift, bones tired and just wanting to be home. She talked easy, mentioning the regulars who came into Mel's, the construction crews who ordered the same thing every morning, the cops who never tipped, Mike from my own warehouse, who apparently ordered pancakes every Sunday before his shift. Natural stuff, the kind of details you'd only know from really working there. But something felt off. Her uniform was too clean for someone 8 hours into a diner shift. No coffee stains, no grease spots, nothing. The name tag said Sandy, but looked fresh from the package. And her shoes were expensive running sneakers, when every server at Mel's wore those cheap black non-slip ones. About 10 minutes in, she asked me to stop at this bank for an ATM. I told her there was one right at Mel's, and she said it was broken. Too quick. No pause to think. Then she mentioned it was Friday. Payday at the warehouse. Thing is, we get paid on Thursdays and always have. But I deposited my check yesterday because I was too tired Thursday morning. That's when I noticed the car behind us. Dark sedan, staying back exactly 3 car lengths. She kept checking the side mirror, and every time she did, she'd smile slightly. She directed me toward the old industrial area, claiming it was a shortcut. There was no construction where she said there was. The sedan followed us into every turn before I even signaled. They knew exactly where we were going. I realized she wasn't just some stranded worker. This was a setup. When I spotted a gas station ahead, I told her I needed fuel. She glanced at my gauge and said, I had plenty. She could see it from where she sat. I knew I was in serious trouble. I pulled up to a pump anyway and got out with my keys. Told her the card reader was broken and I had to pay inside. Soon as I reached the door, I heard car doors slamming behind me. I didn't look back, just walked straight through to the rear exit and ran, cut through an alley, and made it to a 24-hour gym 2 blocks over, called the cops from there. When they went back to check, my car was still at the pump, but the woman and the sedan were gone. They found my wallet under the passenger seat. I always kept it in my back pocket. She'd lifted it without me feeling a thing. Turns out, this crew had hit 3 other night shift workers that month. All the same pattern. Woman plays stranded, knows personal details about their workplace. Accomplices followed to the victim's house for robbery. They never caught them. Probably moved on to another city with another diner, and another set of tired workers just trying to get home. I used to think hitchhiking had a kind of charm to it. There was something fascinating about trading trust on the side of a road. 2 strangers, 1 destination, and just enough silence to make you wonder about their life. I'd done it dozens of times in college, mostly to save money. But after a few rides, it stopped being practical and started feeling like part of the experience. A little risky, sure, but I always believed I had good judgment. And like most people, who think they're sharp enough to read strangers, I'd watched all the hitchhiking horror videos online with morbid curiosity. The ones claiming to be real, gas station footage, dash cams, grainy parking lot photos. They were wild, but strangely compelling. I never thought I'd be in one. The night it happened, I'd been out at a pool party hosted by a guy I barely knew. Rich house, someone's cousin supposedly had a record deal, and half the people there were just orbiting free booze. I was 23, comfortably stupid, and thought I could handle the ugly side of a cheap fast night. I didn't black out, but I got further into the bottle than I should have. And by the time I stepped outside to call for a ride, my phone was dead, and the buzz in my ears had drowned out. Whatever caution might have tried to speak up. I remember crossing a quiet side street and spotting a car idling nearby. It was an older sedan, a dark silver Camry with the windows rolled down. I walked over and asked the driver if he was heading past Glenview, told him where my apartment was, and that I'd just need a lift a few miles down. He didn't say yes or no, he just nodded once, slow and deliberate. Then unlocked the doors and leaned back. The car didn't smell clean, but it wasn't unpleasant either. Just old food wrappers, spilled coffee, the kind of scent that stuck to fabric after too many long nights on the road. The seatbelt clicked smoothly. The engine stayed steady, and I remember feeling like I'd gotten lucky. The next thing I remember was pain. I came to with the sharp, metallic taste of blood blooming across my tongue, and the side of my face stinging where he'd hit me. Hard. A ring or watch had caught the edge of my mouth. My ears were still ringing as I sat up straight and looked around. The dash clock said 2:43 a.m., which meant I'd been out for at least 40 minutes. We weren't near Glenview. We weren't near anything. The car was pulled off onto some gravel shoulder with a thin wire fence buried in tall grass. The nearest streetlight was a distant blur, and the only sound outside was wind moving through the reeds. I looked at him, but he wasn't looking back at me. He was gripping the steering wheel so tight I could hear the leather creak. I asked him something. I don't remember what. Maybe where we were, maybe if he was all right. He turned toward me. His face wasn't angry. It wasn't even pulled tight with intensity. It was loose, relaxed, in a way that made everything more disturbing. He said I had ruined something, that when I moved in my sleep, everything went out of balance. Like whatever was supposed to happen had been interrupted. I hadn't heard him say anything before, but he told me he'd given me a chance, that things could have gone clean if I'd just stayed asleep. He wasn't threatening me, at least not directly. It was worse than threats. He was explaining something he believed completely and calmly, and for a few seconds, I felt like I wasn't in danger. I was just an obstacle to some fragmented geometry unfolding in his mind. He started tapping one finger against the wheel, counting something under his breath, eyes on the darkness ahead, like the road would eventually tell him what to do next. That's when I noticed it, maybe half a mile back, just over the tree line, 2 faint flashes of color, like someone far off had flicked on hazard lights, or a cruiser had slowed down behind the brush. Too far to identify, but bright enough to reach us. if someone was looking or listening. I moved my hand casually toward the wheel, like I was adjusting my position. I hovered my palm inches above the center, stared straight ahead, and dropped it hard on the horn. The sound shattered the silence, shrill, echoing off the trees nearby. The man jolted upward as if shocked out of sleep. He snapped back into motion faster than I expected, slamming his foot onto the gas without even checking the mirrors. The car lurched backward into a brutal spin that tossed gravel across the shoulder and nearly clipped my leg as I bailed out and hit the dirt. He backed onto the road crookedly and took off down it, wheels still spitting chunks of rock, as he vanished around a bend with the headlights bouncing, like he didn't care where he was steering. I got up shaky, coat torn at the elbow. I walked toward the direction of the lights. They were real. A parked sheriff cruiser was pulled up a side road, near the entrance to a small turnoff, 2 officers inside. I flagged them down with one raised hand, and a breathing rhythm I could barely hold together. What they told me an hour later still sits heavy in my head. The Camry they found had crashed near a gated utility road, about 2 miles from where I jumped out. The front end was nearly flattened, against a cedar split rail. No airbag deployment, no driver. They found tracks leading out of the car and into a stretch of woods that ran parallel with the highway. But they stopped after about 50 yards. He never came in for questioning. No matches from the plate, not even a real registration.